Happy New Year, Downers Grove. Good evening and welcome to the January 8th, 2019 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. It is my privilege to call this meeting to order. If you haven't already done so, there are copies of our agenda on either side of the room. Please feel free to pick up a copy. You can follow along with tonight's proceedings. There will be multiple opportunities for public comment, both with respect to items that are on tonight's agenda, as well as a segment under item 4, which is reserved for public comments of a general nature. At that point in time, if any members of the audience have any questions or comments of a general nature with respect to things not on tonight's agenda, we'd welcome you up to the podium. Please let us know who you are, and we'd love to hear from you. Now, I want to apologize for being a few minutes late, but we were having an amazing conversation with the scouts from PAC 57 who were very interested in the operations of the village, and I think there's at least 2 or 3 future council candidates in that group, if I'm not mistaken. It's a good thing they're below the age limit and the filing deadline is passed, because I think there'd be some serious competition over here in the front row. And as I just mentioned, our special guests tonight are PAC 57, and it is our proud custom to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. So I would like to invite PAC 57 up to help lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Flag is over there. Carefully choreographed operation. That'll work. All right, ready, Scouts? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Excellent. Thank you very much, Scouts. Future leaders there, all of them. All right, with that, I'd like to ask our fine village clerk, April Holden, Happy New Year. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Wallace?
Here.
Commissioner Earl?
Here.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Here.
Commissioner White?
Here.
Commissioner Jose?
Here.
Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Mayor Tully?
Here. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 3, which pertains to minutes of past council meetings. We have one set of minutes to review and approve tonight. Those are the minutes of our regular council meeting from December 18th, 2018. If there are no changes, comments, questions, or concerns, I would ask for a motion to approve, please.
Mayor Tully, I move the council approve the meeting minutes from December 18th, 2018 as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes pass unanimously. And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, we are at item 4. For those of you who are listening, item 4 is reserved for comments of a general nature. Anybody in the audience who has any questions or comments of a general nature with respect to things that are not on tonight's agenda, I would invite you to please come to the podium, let us know who you are, and we'll welcome hearing from you. All right, yes, we do have some general comments. Please. Good evening, welcome.
How are you?
Happy New Year.
My name is Jennifer Hosmel, thank you. I live at 1100 Norfolk Street. I'm here because about a year ago there was some new construction that was started next to me. I was concerned about it when it started, and I expressed that to the village because of the amount of water that was held on that property for so many years. And the house is now complete, and I am having significant flooding on my property from this new construction. So I've spoke with many village members, and I don't really feel like anything's being done to change the situation, to help the flooding. It has a lot to do with the way they've chosen to drain it. It's just not working. There's a lot of details. I don't know how many of the details you want, but I spoke with Nicole Wallace and Stan Popovich, and so that's why I'm here. I have pictures of the flooding of my yard and points I wanted to just go over. And it's just, but the bottom line is that my property, which never had flooded, I'm not in a flood zone. I was taken out of the flood zone. It's a local area of poor drainage. And my property is routinely flooding with moderate amounts of water.
I'm sorry to hear that. Thank you for coming here tonight and sharing that with us. If you're talking to Mr. Popovich and Nicole Wallace, you're certainly talking to the right people. And I have been told that staff is aware of the issues.
Okay.
And in many respects agrees with your concerns and is or will be taking steps to address them
Okay.
as soon as reasonably possible. I hope that's at least as much as I can tell you tonight. If you'd like to share the photos with
Yeah, I'll
us,
share
we'd
the
be happy to
photos, and
take
I
them.
just made a 2-page of my points.
If you,
Is that okay?
either that,
Like,
entirely
what do
up
you
to
mean
you.
by sharing? Like, I just give them to you and you take them and you look at them?
What I was going to suggest is entirely up to you, is you can either share them with us now, or if you'd like to leave the photos
can leave
and the
them.
list with our village staff, they'll make sure that the entire council sees them,
Okay, that would be great.
if that's okay with you.
Yes,
Perfect. Well, I'm
Thank you.
sorry for the situation, but thank you for coming down here and sharing it with us.
thank you.
Any other questions or comments of a general nature with respect to things not on tonight's agenda? All right, very well. Not hearing any further, then we will move to item 5, which is our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Majority, I move the council approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to any items on tonight's consent agenda? Questions or comments from members of the village council? May I have roll call, please?
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl? Aye. Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, the consent agenda passes unanimously. That brings us to item 6, which is our active agenda. We have 2 items on tonight's active agenda. First, do I have a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing an amended employment agreement with David B. Fieldman, village manager?
Majority, I move the council adopt a resolution authorizing execution of the amended employment agreement for David B. Fieldman, all as presented.
Second.
Questions or comments from members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the village council? Commissioner White.
Very well deserved, very appropriate, and I'll be supporting this.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you. Commissioner Waldeck, Happy New Year.
Thank you, Mayor. Happy New Year. I was just going to save this one up. Knock, knock. Sir?
Oh, I'm
Knock,
sorry.
knock.
Is that directed to me?
Yes, to you.
I have no idea what you're doing.
Knock, knock.
Who's there? I'll go, all right, I'll go along. Who's there?
Mayor.
I'm not comfortable with this, Commissioner. Go ahead. Make your point.
The answer is Mayor who and Mayor Daysby Merriam Bright. Okay.
Oh, all right.
I do have...
Thank you.
I do have a problem with both these items, and I'll speak to both of them now. The hardest job in any corporation or supervisor business is the evaluation and compensation of its employees. It's rarely a pleasant job. People generally don't look forward to it, and that's also the situation here as well. When we talk about when the village council talks about its employees, we actually have 3 direct reports: the village clerk, the village attorney, and the village manager. And so that's what we're dealing with these 2 items here. Processes are important, and how we go about the way we evaluate and compensate is important, not for just today, whatever the decision is, but it's also for future activities. It's also for the future. It may turn out somewhere down the line, you never know, it could turn out into litigation. So what we do and the way we do it is extremely important. And what was written up in the materials, if you're a home gamer and you go to today's meetings and you look up this item, it says council conducted. And one thing this council didn't do was conduct. A council is the 7 of us, and not one of us going around individually interviewing council members one at a time. It's meant to be in a meeting. Generally, it's done in exec session. I had asked for an exec session. I thought it was important that we have a discussion There was no discussion. Basically, it was the mayor coming in, saying, oh, you know, you got the materials, you looked at it, they seem worthy of it, let's give it 2.5%. Any comments? And I says, yeah, I'd like an exec session, and I did make some other comments. And I don't know if any of those other comments got to any of my fellow commissioners. I don't know. Certainly none of their comments came back to me. On Wednesday, I expressed that in an email to the mayor, that I wanted an exec session, and here it is on the agenda. And we could be very transparent. I could publicly hold an evaluation of 2 employees here tonight, going into details and talking about their strengths and weaknesses, et cetera. As much as I'd like to do that, I don't think it's appropriate here. I don't think this was a good process. I think it sets a bad precedent. I think new council members and people watching may think, well, for the next evaluation may think, oh, well, it's typical. The mayor just goes around, interviews the council members, and comes up with a response. And there's no need for exec session or process or anything else. Because of the lack of process, because I think this was a rather, what I would call a lazy and perfidious way of doing things, I will not be in support of either of these 2 motions. It's not a reflection of the employees, it's the reflection of lack of process. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And may everything be very bright with you, too. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Commissioner Jose, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Mayor.
No knock-knock jokes, please.
I had none prepared. I'll be supporting both measures. I think perfidious might be a little bit strong of a word, but I can understand frustration, I suppose, with the lack of process, but any responsibility for that rests with the 7 people up on this dais. We've talked about process in the past. Do we want to do what's been done this year? Do we want to do something different than what's been done in the past? And we've reached no consensus and taken no action. If we want a different process, let's put it together. But be that as it may, the employees who were reviewed and input was taken by the mayor, and the evaluation was global. It was from all of us. And I think they're doing a tremendous job, and that they have more than earned the 2.5% increases that are, frankly, roughly cost of living, give or take a couple of pennies here and there. I don't see any problem with moving forward, and I think a no vote sends a bad message throughout the organization. If we want a different process, let's take responsibility and build it. Until then, let's say thank you for the hard work that both Manager Fieldman and Village Attorney Petrarca have put in, and move forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from members of the Village Council?
So
Commissioner White.
I do have a very brief comment about process, and this has to go with my experience both at District 99 and here. What I'm very impressed with by the process is that feedback to staff happens continuously throughout the year through the long-range planning process. That we're continually giving feedback. In an organization where there's not continuous feedback, then once a year to set aside a meeting to focus entirely on that merit may be appropriate. I don't think it's necessary here, because all of us have continuous feedback with village staff. They're very responsive to everything. They're very responsive to all of us. There's actually nothing that I would learn at a meeting that I don't already know from what happens throughout the entire year.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from the council? I do want to address the process point, because I think it's important for those here to have some context. And to begin with, the word perfidious means deceitful and untrustworthy. So I'm going to give Commissioner Waldeck the benefit of the doubt and assume that what he meant was perfunctory and not perfidious, because I would object strenuously to anything deceitful or untrustworthy with this process. But back to the word process. There was a process. It's just one that I understand that one of my colleagues did not like. In the 16 years that I've served in the Village Council, either as mayor or as a member of the Village Council, there have been 16 evaluations. There has been a process each time. I don't think the process has been the same once. because every time we have a different council, different people come to that evaluation situation, bringing their own personal business and other experience to the table. Some people come from the healthcare industry, some people come from the construction industry, some people come from the legal industry, some people come from finance. Everybody thinks that they know the best process when it comes to conducting an evaluation, so every year, the old process is determined to be inadequate, and it gets changed. And sometimes what we have are 7 people that can't agree on a process, and yet we still have a job to do, which is to conduct evaluations of our employees and move forward. Sometimes it falls upon the shoulders of the mayor, whether he or she likes it or not, because their process, as was noted, doesn't come together. There was a process, ladies and gentlemen. I understand that not everybody agreed with the process. I do confess that if there was a request for an executive session, I must have missed it, because I'm looking at the email and the word executive does not appear anywhere in it. So my fault. I didn't read between the lines and understand that's what was being requested. But the reality is that it is absolutely a fact that all 7 members of the village council shared their views on this topic. They did it through me for expediency's sake, so I understand that there may have been a desire to have multiple meetings and to sit around and talk to one another. But typically that's something that we do when it's necessary to do so. Believe it or not, we don't meet just for the sake of meeting. And clearly what we're doing here tonight reflects the majority of the village council's advice and consent. And so that is the process. And it could be a different process, and I suspect that next year there will be yet another conversation about process, and there will be at least 2, maybe 4 different people up here who will bring their own life experiences to the table, and the whole thing will start over again, because that's what's happened for at least 16 years that I've been involved. So with all due respect, I disagree with you, Commissioner Waldeck, but you're certainly entitled to disagree with the way things were conducted. And I don't begrudge you that at all. So with that, ask for a roll call, please.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl? Aye. Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Matter passes 6-1. That brings us to item 6B as in boy. Do we have a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing an amended employment agreement with Enza I. Petrarca, village attorney?
Mayor Tully, I move the council adopt a resolution authorizing the execution of an amended employment agreement for Enza Petrarca as presented.
Second.
Questions or comments from members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the village council? I just want to add one thing that I think my colleagues have already mentioned, and that is our disagreement up here about process should be viewed as nothing more than that, and in no way, shape, or form should be any kind of reflection upon the exceptional high-quality staff that we have that we're recognizing here tonight. I just want to make sure that that's said very clearly and succinctly. Roll call, please.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl? Aye. Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. The matter also passes 6-1 and brings us to the end of our active agenda. On to item 7, our first reading or our workshop agenda. This is the portion of our meeting which is less formal. This is where items are presented for discussion and consideration only. No formal action will be taken on these items tonight. Typically what we do is we ask a member of our fine village staff to present the item for discussion and consideration. The council this time will start with any questions or comments, and then we'll turn it over to the audience for any questions or comments there, and then any wrap-up here in the village council. So the first item on tonight's first reading is item 7A, and I will introduce the famous David B. Fieldman, our village manager. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, Mayor. Thank you for the introduction. We do have 2 items on our first reading agenda tonight. The first item is consideration of an ordinance annexing property on Katrina Avenue. Here to present the background information on this petition is our Community Development Director, Stan Popovich.
Good evening, Mr. Popovich. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you as well, Mayor and the council members. It's nice to be here again tonight. As Manager Fieldman noted, the first item is an annexation of 5614 Katrina Avenue, located on the west side of town, just south of Maple Avenue here near I-355. Property is outlined in red. It's currently unincorporated, but it is adjacent to Downers Grove on the south and the west. Petitioner is proposing to annex into the village and maintain the R1 zoning. It is appropriate in terms of its lot size and lot area. With the annexation, it would change the boundary of the village to include that portion of Katrina Avenue adjacent to the property as well. So this would be the revised map upon approval. With regard to the comprehensive plan, it's a state residential, increases residential diversity, and it does meet the standards of the annexation policy. If there's any questions I can answer at this time, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Popovich. Questions, comments from members of the village council? We always like to see people joining the village. Questions or comments from members of the audience? Very good. Well, thank you. And look forward to having you join us. Thank you. Welcome. Oh.
Was that a residential area?
The question was that a residential or commercial area? And I'm repeating the question because I'm not going to ask you to come all the way down to the podium, but it is important that anyone who has a question does come to the podium, because otherwise, ma'am, you don't need to. You don't need to. I'll just repeat it. But in the future, because otherwise people at home cannot hear you. Our meetings are televised and recorded, and they're not going to hear you way back there. So the question was, is the property in question residential or industrial?
Thank you for stalling. And it is residential. It's an R1 zoning classification, so it's the largest residential lot in the residential zoning classifications.
Thank you. So the answer is it's residential.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mr. Popovich.
You're welcome.
All right, very good. Next item, please.
The next item is consideration of a report and discussion on options for regulating the sale of dogs, cats, and rabbits in the village. Tonight's presentation will be made by Dan Carlson. He works in the manager's office. Dan started with us several years ago as an intern in Public Works. He is an absolute all-star performer, working his way up the organizational chart, and we depend on him for a lot of work that you see presented by other department heads throughout the year. So Dan's making his debut presentation tonight, so here's Dan Carlson.
Terrific. Good evening, Mr. Carlson. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you guys for having me up here today.
Thank you for being here.
So I'm here tonight to present the staff report in regards to researching the options for regulating the sale of dogs, cats, and rabbits in the village of Downers Grove. This report provides a framework of the laws and regulations currently in place and the options that staff has identified for council consideration. At the federal level, the commercial sale of animals are regulated by the Animal Welfare Act. The Animal Welfare Act requires that commercial breeders provide minimum standards of care and treatment for certain animals bred for commercial sale. The State of Illinois Animal Welfare Act contains regulations regarding the breeding and sale of animals. The act was amended in 2014 to add regulations for animal sale warranties, and in 2017 to provide statewide pet sourcing standards for Illinois pet stores. Staff has identified 3 options for council consideration. The third option, which would require village council to adopt regulations, provides a subset of 3 options to explore. Option 1 would be no new regulations. Under this option, the village council would not regulate the sale of dogs, cats, and rabbits. There would be no impact to current pet sale practices and no impact to the village of Downers Grove operations. Option 2 would be to support the approval of Senate Bill 2280. Under this option, the village council would support the approval of Senate Bill 2280, which includes the regulations of the sale of dogs, cats, and rabbits in DuPage and Will County. This bill would allow pet shop operators to offer a dog, cat, or rabbit for sale only if the pet shop operator has obtained the animal from a facility operated by a specified rescue organization or a unit of government. This bill has been referred to Senate assignment and no further action has been taken at this time. Option 3 would be to establish Village of Downers Grove regulations. As I said earlier, there's a subset of 3 options for establishing these regulations concerning this issue. Option 3A would be to prohibit the retail sale of dogs, cats, and rabbits in the Village of Downers Grove. Under this option, Village Council would prohibit the retail sale of dogs, cats, and rabbits. Village staff would have to conduct inspections to ensure compliance with this ordinance. Option 3B would be to restrict the retail sale of dogs, cats, and rabbits. Under this option, Village Council would only allow the retail sale of dogs, cats, and rabbits if they were sourced from a breeder supplier meeting certain certified standards. There is a high administrative burden for this option, and determining the extent to which breeder suppliers meet the established standards would likely be challenging. The state of Illinois adopted a similar amendment to the Animal Welfare Act by adopting Public Act 100-0322. Option 3C would be establish a mandatory warranty period after the purchase of a dog, cat, or rabbit. Under this option, the village would establish mandatory warranty periods after the purchase of a dog, cat, or rabbit, which would entitle consumers to be reimbursed if a licensed veterinarian determines the animal was unfit for purchase due to illness or disease. The state of Illinois also passed a similar amendment to the Animal Welfare Act by adopting Public Act 098-0509 in 2014. This report is for informational purposes only and does not require any council action at this time. I'm happy to answer any questions as needed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Fine job with the inaugural presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, then I will open it up for council questions. I will preface my request by noting that the council has received input from a number of different individuals and organizations over the last number of weeks, from a number of different people and organizations and businesses who have an interest in this topic. So fair to say we've had a fair amount of reading provided to us from a number of different sources in addition to what was presented here tonight. I don't say that to discourage anyone from saying whatever they wish to say when we get to public comment, but just wanted to make that point. So with that, questions, comments from members of the Village Council? They're all tired out from all the reading. Commissioner Waldeck.
I'll open it up with, one of my concerns is individuals, families that have pets, and the female has puppies, has a litter, and they may need help trying to sell or handle the disposition of the puppies. And I'm just wondering if anything that we're considering would affect their ability, or could we improve the ability of them to maybe move some of those pups or kittens or rabbits to a pet store? Does it have to be a rescue type situation, or do they go to a rescue outfit and have them submit it? I don't know. Just concerned for the families that wind up having unexpected pregnancies.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments, members of the council? Commissioner White, please.
Well, I just have a couple of not really prepared points, just a few points I want to make. I think the staff report, including detailed information from other municipalities, gives us really all the information we need to make a decision. And I think it's very, very comprehensive. My initial reaction, my opinion about Commissioner Waldeck's question is that the ordinances I've seen would prohibit the retail sale. So an occasional sale, I don't believe, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, that if somebody sold a puppy to their sister, not in the course of business as a one-off type of thing, that's not what this ordinance would cover. Is that correct?
We haven't actually started drafting any language, but what we could do if we're directed to draft an ordinance is carve out to make it clear that the situation that Commissioner Waldeck is talking about
If
is
you
not
engage
prohibited.
in the business of retail sale, that's what would be prohibited. And occasional sales that the state of Illinois wouldn't consider to be retail. If I sell a used vase to my brother, I'm not in the business of selling vases.
I think we could take steps to make it clear the difference between the situation Commissioner Waldeck spoke of and any kind of commercial breeder that would be, I think, the intent of any ordinance.
My second comment I want to make at this point is, I've been thinking about this quite a while since this was brought up as new business, I believe, back in October. And I'm really pretty much at 3A, simply prohibit the retail sale within the village. I've looked at the sample U.S. Humane Society draft ordinance. I like that draft ordinance. Obviously, there's a lot of details we worked out, but that's where I'm at right now. The third point I want to make is that I want this council to take ownership of the decision and make the decision with a reasonable degree of swiftness and decisiveness and not get bogged down. I'm aware that Naperville talked about this for over a year and ended up doing nothing. And that's the scenario I want us to totally avoid doing. That I think is a policy decision. The seven of us take ownership of the question, we make a decision, we move on. And that's what I hope happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And on that point, I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but it's already been hinted at. We do not have any proposed ordinance before us tonight to specifically consider. What we have is a staff report that was capably delivered with respect to different paths that we could go down that would lead to the development of an ordinance, because even an ordinance that said we prohibit the sale of all dogs, cats, and rabbits in the Village of Downers Grove, you then have to figure out what does that mean and how does that impact in the real world. Just saying that by itself doesn't go far enough. So what we're talking about tonight is where would we want to go in terms of what type of ordinance would then staff work on, which would have to come back to us later as an actual ordinance with all the language and details and other implications addressed, so that we could work those out in another workshop meeting. I just want to make that clear that if there was, I don't know if there's going to be direction here tonight or not, but if there is, it's not going to result in an ordinance that can be voted on immediately. That will be another step. Likewise, I mean, the only thing that would not require another step is if the direction was to take no action, in which case there's nothing to draft. But anything else would require actual preparation of some kind of an ordinance that would then have to come back to the village council and the community for consideration, input, and fine tuning if necessary. So, sorry for that commercial interruption. Happy New Year, Commissioner Earl.
I am firmly in support of option 3A. What that looks like, what the ordinance that we would get actually looks like. I think we have some prime examples out there that other communities are using. So the language could be tailored to fit our needs, but there's plenty of language out there that, for an example, I don't think it should stop us from supporting the Senate bill, but that's not going to be enough, I don't believe, and I think we should move forward with option 3A.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions, thoughts? Commissioner Barnett, Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, Mayor. Full disclosure to my colleagues, a rescue dog owner. I think it's an important thing to do, and I certainly encourage everybody to if they're considering a pet, consider that as an option. Just kind of a discussionary thing. The Senate bill that's in question may or may not come back alive, but it would have the effect of prohibiting sales of anything that wasn't through some sort of rescue organization, right? Isn't that the gist of it? And that, I guess, to me, that seems like kind of our goal. The idea of not allowing any sales strikes me as, I don't know, an overreach. I mean, I think I hear, and we've talked about this 2 or 3 times in the last, I don't know, 10 years, but I think I hear most people's concern being that if we have a market, if we're helping establish or maintain a market for puppy mill dogs, it helps support puppy mills. That's kind of the circular conversation there. And I doubt that there's anybody sitting here tonight that is interested in supporting puppy mills. I don't know that that's the same as prohibiting all sales within the village. It seems a little bit like would you say, Greg, a howitzer instead of a sniper rifle? If we have a store in town that sells puppies, and if we knew they were operating like the one we heard about last time in Naperville, Dog Patch, I think, we probably wouldn't be entertaining this conversation. We think we have information about sourcing that makes us uncomfortable, and I understand that. I'm certainly sympathetic to it. I'm questioning whether we really mean we don't want any of these animals sold within our village. I'm not sure how that furthers the goals of the village or benefits our residents. If the goal is puppy mills, I'm not sure we're the right organization to be trying to legislate in a way that controls them. So I don't have an answer or a decision, and I'm hopeful we're going to hear a lot more tonight. And as Mayor said, we've gotten a lot to read. I haven't read it all. To be frank with everybody, I'm still reading through it. But my initial reaction is the idea of just banning sales within our community strikes me as just sort of a big, easy swing that doesn't necessarily hit the mark. So that's where I'm at. Waiting to hear a lot more.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Wallace, I haven't wished you a Happy New Year yet.
Happy New Year, Mayor. Thank you. At the moment, I'm inclined to support option 3A. However, I do realize that this is a very emotional topic for a lot of people. We have a business owner in town who would be affected, and we also have all of our advocates out there who have came and spoke before us, before tonight. So quite frankly, I'm looking forward to and waiting for public comment. Again, I'm inclined to support 3A, but again, I realize the kind of the sticky situation that we're in, and looking forward to hearing more from the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. If you don't mind, Commissioner Waldeck, I'm going to go to Commissioner Jose because he hasn't had a chance yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm inclined toward option 3A at the moment myself. I think Commissioner Barnett has raised some good concerns. I think it might be a little too broad, but I also don't like the administrative burden that comes along with the idea of option B, the meeting certain identified standards. I think we can easily articulate what those standards might be, and it may be, you'd say, okay, nothing but a rescue dog can be sold within the corporate limits of Downers Grove. But I think policing that becomes a much larger concern. And if the Senate and the House and the governor decide that that's the way they want to go within DuPage and Will or any other county in the state, that's great. And maybe at the end of the day, we would consider doing something different. But I think it is the simpler solution, even if it's probably somewhat less elegant, to simply say you cannot sell dogs, cats, rabbits within the village of Downers Grove. I think it's something we can move on, as Commissioner White said, fairly expeditiously. And it is something that I think we've heard a good amount of feedback on and that the residents support. So I'm inclined toward option A at the moment. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you. Rather than waiting for public comment, maybe I'll get some feedback from these. First of all, I see nothing wrong with setting up a resolution that's in option 2 that hopefully puts a little pressure, probably very little, on the state to adopt a law that's sitting there languishing. I think it's best when the federal government does things right. They tend not to, especially since it was revealed that a lot of the website from the agricultural department that's supposed to list violators doesn't do so because of special interests. So we can't really rely on the federal government. I wish we could. I wish the state would do it because it has a more far-reaching effect. But for our purposes, I would go with option 3. And the idea of having an administrative burden, as it was put, and there's a cost due to that, I do propose a solution. We outsource a lot of our expertise. We don't have expert plumbers or electricians or elevators. We outsource elevator inspectors because we don't have them, we can't afford to keep them, but it's something that we need to do. So we outsource these types of things. And so I don't see anything wrong with outsourcing the inspections and putting requirements out and outsourcing the inspections to, let's say, the Humane Society, Anti-Cruelty Society, put it in the hands of experts to do that. Now the question always is, where's the money come from? And I proposed something like this before for different reasons, but we have a number of doggy and cat hotels, overnight stays, or they stay several days. I see nothing wrong with adding maybe $1 or $2 to an overnight stay, or whatever the math comes out to be, to have a contract with a organization to pay them for their expertise to do the inspections. And so, if a doggy hotel, if it costs you an extra $1 or 50 cents or whatever to pay for that, I could certainly support something like that. And that would not only protect, I think, the dogs, the cats, the rabbits, the other critters, and not just the breeding, but their living conditions as well. So I think that might help relieve the so-called administrative burden. And that's a thought I had, and I'd like feedback on that, from the public especially. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just want to clarify, was that then a point towards option 3B? I'm just trying to keep score.
Oh, I don't have it in front of me.
3B was restricting the sale of dogs, cats, and rabbits to breeders, suppliers meeting certain identified standards, which has a high administrative burden. I just want to make sure that's what you were referring to. Okay, thank you.
You know, that was to help, the idea was to help relieve the administrative burden part. I think that's the way to go, and get rid of the administrative burden.
Basically 3B, but address the concern about the administrative burden.
Right.
Got it. Thank you for the clarification. I think others have spoken to the issue. We've read a lot. I also want to hear what folks have to say. I'll just make this comment. This is something that in concept is very appealing and very simple. In execution, it's more challenging. And there are also issues we haven't even talked about yet that I suspect we'll hear about from members of the audience. And that may be things that have to be addressed in an ordinance. But like many things, in concept, it's really easy. Done. Simple. In execution, there may be some more twists and turns that we have to address. But I suspect we'll hear about some of those tonight, as we have heard about some of them in the past. If there are no other questions in the council at this point in time, what I will propose doing is I'll open it up to the audience for questions or comments, and then we can always come back based on what we hear. So I will ask now, if any members of the audience have any questions or comments on this topic, please come to the podium, let us know who you are, and welcome hearing from you. Good evening, Happy New Year.
Good evening to you, Mayor and Council. Happy New Year. Brian Krajewski, 6455 Nash Street in Downers Grove, also a DuPage County board member, and I chair the DuPage Animal Services Committee. Also was the former chair of the Technology Committee. The only reason I throw that out is your staff report was very well done tonight, and the information that was given to you. I had similar reports that were almost as good when I was the technology chairman. My CIO director, Don Carlson, did a really good job, but wasn't as good as this report here. So, I don't know if you know him, Dan? So, but yeah, but you did a phenomenal job, so congratulations on putting this together. But thank you. I was back here again in October speaking to you, and I know our DuPage County staff had sent you the short reader's version, about 400 and some pages of material, plus what you got from staff. So I know that you have a lot of material to read. The issue of the banning of the sale of puppy mills, it's not when, if it's going to be banned, it's when. It's going to happen. It's happening all over the country in different municipalities and different counties. It's difficult down in Springfield, I can tell you that, being at the county, and we pushed the Senate bill down in Springfield. The puppy mill industry has well-funded lobbyists. We ran into that down in Springfield. We will be going back again this year with a bipartisan bill to support, again, the ban in DuPage County. Some other counties may join us. But when we go down there, we're looking for as much support from DuPage County as we can. That's home rule communities that have educated themselves and will pass a ban in their town, and then other non-home rule communities and government entities that will pass support resolutions. I gave you Downers Grove Township's resolution when I came back in October, and York Township was taking up that night. They have since passed a resolution supporting the ban. Naperville Township is addressing it tonight, and will be passing another resolution in supporting of it. I do have...
I'm sorry to interrupt, but didn't Westmont just pass unanimously a resolution?
Speaking of that, Mayor, Westmont. So I will give this to your Dan. That's Westmont's resolution. Again, they're not a home rule community. If they were, they passed it unanimously to support a ban on the sale, and of course, they're your neighbors and have one of the pet stores right down near them on Ogden Avenue. But they passed that 6-0, and I believe village council members may have reached out to you, Mayor, to push their support for the ban here. Warrenville, as you know, Mayor Brummel was the first DuPage community home rule to pass that. They were a leader in DuPage, and again, we're looking for Downers Grove to take the lead. There's a lot of communities that are looking at what you guys are doing here tonight. Clearly, once you are educated, 3A is the only option. You can talk with Mayor Pineda in West Chicago. They are taking this up right now. They've been working with the county staff and working on the ordinance. As you said, in concept, 3A is the easy one. It's just making sure you have the right language in there. But there's model ordinances, and you'll hear from the Humane Society Executive Director tonight, but they have some good language that municipalities can use. I'm also going to give you this, Dan. This is, well, you know what, before I give it to you, I'm just going to read a couple of comments. This is a bunch of petitions gathered by a number of residents in Downers Grove that were given to me, but they have some comments on the sides here. You know, this must stop the cruelty, you know, great cause. This should be a no-brainer, but these must be people, no puppy mill dog sales, etc. Feel free to, you know, read that, but that's from a bunch of residents in Downers Grove that was passed on. But again, you know, appreciate you guys taking up this issue. We will be going back to Springfield, but it will be very difficult. We expect this, you know, the lobbyists to be, you know, strong again in Springfield. Hopefully DuPage County, if you include more counties, then more people get involved, but hopefully they can pass one for DuPage, but they may not. But the more support we have from government entities and especially home rule communities that will take the lead and listen to the residents in the community and ban the sale of puppy mill dogs. So again, there'll be a lot of people that will talk after me that can answer a lot more of your detailed questions. I just want to say that, you know, we as a county are unanimous in our support to get this in DuPage County, and we're asking for our government entities to help us. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Krajewski. Good to see you. Good evening, welcome.
Hi, Chuck Holtzen, 5226 Carpenter Street. I think I spoke in October about this, and I wanted to address something Mr. Waldeck said, that I was under the impression that this was targeted directly at retail establishments, not at an individual that might have a dog that accidentally gets pregnant or a preservation hobby breeder. I would hope that wouldn't be the case. And I think that it's long past due to have something like this happen. We are involved in the breed of our choice. You see me walk around town, I have Newfoundlands, and we are active in our national breed club, our regional breed club, our obedience club, and if you are a reputable preservation breeder, you also support rescue. So I've also supported rescue. I don't breed, it's hard, I'm not gonna do that. But, you know, it's a tough business, and it's not, you have to have a really strong stomach for that. I support anybody that wants to do rescue. And if you get your dogs through a rescue, I think that's awesome. I prefer to get my dogs through a reputable breeder, and that's what we've always done. But I helped raise $3,000 for a new national to support the 44 Newfoundlands that were pulled out of a place in Michigan about 2 years ago. So I think that it's long past due to have this done, especially in Downers. And I hope that there is wording, verbiage in there that can make sure that it doesn't directly affect someone that might have a dog that gets pregnant, or I don't know of anybody, but I'm sure we might have some reputable breeders in Downers. I hope it wouldn't affect them, because that's one of the big fears in the dog community as far as that goes. So I give it my support, and I think 3A is probably my choice, but at any rate, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you sharing that with us. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? Good evening. Welcome.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kurt Fiedler. I am principal at Moreland Fiedler, based out of Chicago. We are the firm that lobbies for the Illinois Pet Lovers Association. I was here last October when we first brought this up. I want to apologize at the get-go, because I reviewed the packet on this information, or on this subject matter that was posted Friday, and there was no mention in the original packet of the 2017 law we negotiated. So I was glad to hear that he mentioned it, but he never went into detail, and your packet didn't go into detail about the full negotiated measures in that law from 2017 to ensure that if a pet store is going to operate in this state, they have substantial standards they have to adhere to and acknowledge and report to the Department of Ag in order for them to sell a puppy. They can only do it from a USDA licensed breeder. Actually, let me back up. They can source from a rescue, a shelter, a small hobby breeder. So that does address your question and concern. If somebody does have an accidental litter and they want to sell it to a pet store, that option is still available under state law. The difference is pet stores have to be picky because, as you stated, in 2014 there's the puppy lemon law, and some stores like Happiness's Pets go beyond that in terms of their warranties. So if the dog doesn't, if they don't think they can guarantee that dog, that sale may not occur. That's true. But if a pet store is going to get a dog, cat, or rabbit from a commercial breeder, it has to be USDA licensed. They have no violations for 2 years in the critical direct matter, no minor violations for 3. Every dog has to be microchipped. It was not discussed in detail in this packet. Every home rule municipality that has a pet store has an ordinance that's very similar to the state law. Our state law goes a little bit further. I'm not sure if that was included in your packet as well. We provided this information to you back in October. I sent additional information in November. I've asked, I said, if you guys want to have additional discussions with us as a resource, we're available. In terms of, there was a question about the USDA reports on its website. That came up when we were discussing this bill in 2017. You're correct. The USDA did have that website pulled down, but it was only because the president and his administration at the time said it violated FOIA laws. And so that's why it pulled down. It caused us a little bit of problems on the state end. We worked around that, saying that the pet store have to have those reports in hand before they purchase the puppy, and those reports have to be sent to the state. If we're in violation, we lose our license, and there are fines attached to it. So I was very disappointed to see the packet of information lacking a lot of detail of the 2017 law that we negotiated with HSUS, we negotiated with the state vets, we negotiated with the breeders clubs, we also negotiated with the counties. DuPage County was a part of the negotiation that we're very aware of, the bill that we passed. The primary disagreement we had is we believe that this standard should be strong enough to be a statewide standard, the preempt home rule. And I still think that's a goal to get to. The state of Ohio, when we passed in 2017, we surpassed the state of Ohio in our standards. Ohio apparently said, well, we can't let Illinois beat us. They increased their standards on their breeders of saying, if a pet store is going to buy from a breeder in Ohio, not only they have even higher standards. If we want to go to those higher standards, that's fine. We're willing to discuss that and negotiate it, but let's do that so that it applies statewide so everybody has the same rules. That way, it ensures that you don't go from a highly regulated market to where consumers know where they're getting a puppy to an unregulated market to where the only resource they have, if not a rescue or a shelter, is online. And that's where you come to get a lot of problems. I don't know if you guys catch it, but the Better Business Bureau every year sends out the warning, watch out for the scams online because you don't know what you're getting. If you don't go to the pet store, if you don't go direct to the breeder, you're not going to know what you're going to get. Or sometimes you don't even get the dog at all. And that's not what we want for Illinois. We want to make sure, just as everybody else here, that puppy mills do not have access to Illinois. I actually resent the description of being a puppy mill lobbyist. I am not that, sir. And so we abhor puppy mills. They actually are a bane to our existence. We want them gone just as much as you are. But to say that every breeder is a puppy mill is wrong. You cannot go to a USDA licensed breeder and go through those facilities and say that they're a puppy mill. You'll see the pictures of puppy mills. You can then go see a USDA licensed breeder. You will see 2 different pictures. And if you guys, I highly recommend it. We will take you to go see our breeders. Not a problem. Anytime you want to. It could be on the spot. We told you in October, come and see a USDA licensed breeder. We'd happily open the doors to you. Please call the USDA. We provided that information to staff. Talk to the USDA about how they improved their inspection process since 2010. They had a huge audit finding, found that their standards were inadequate. They revised them entirely following 2010. Between those reforms on the inspections and multiple states like Illinois, like Ohio, like Arizona, going to these types of breeder standards, their compliance has increased. Because the industry has said, no, we're changing this. We're going to up our standards. We're going to make sure that people have quality pets. And then keep this in mind. It's like pet stores account for maybe 5% of sales nationwide. So most people have a choice of where they want to go. Pet stores is not the first choice. But we just want to make sure that we preserve that choice for anybody who wants to go to either a rescue shelter, directly to the breeder, or if they're more comfortable at a pet store. We want to make sure those options are preserved, but if they go to a pet store has to comply with very high standards in order for that to occur. And that's what we want, that's what we think. If we need to enhance them, let's enhance them, and then let's apply it statewide. So that way we can be a higher example so that everybody follows the same rules. But to not have that information and that level of detail included to you from the get-go, I apologize. I thought I gave them the information early enough. I thought you would have had it today for review. And I'll be around for any further questions. Thank you.
Okay, I do have one question.
Wait 1 second, Commissioner. Thank you, appreciate that. I just want to let you know that we did receive the information directly back in the fall, and more recently through a business owner and our Chamber of Commerce received information on Senate Bill 1882, and a lot of what you just said. So thank you for restating it, but I just want to make sure that you understand that we actually do
It
have.
didn't seem that way in terms of when I saw the packet on Friday.
Sure, I understand it may
2017
not have
wasn't even
been,
mentioned.
I understand it may not have been the packet that was online, but as mentioned, we have received information since September of last year from a number of sources.
I understand
And
that
then
too,
more
yes.
recently, again, the fact sheet on the Safe Pets Bill and so on and so forth. I see Commissioner Wallace has it right in front of her. So yes, fear not, we do have it.
So
Thank you. No,
I
thank you for waiting.
Okay, no. My question, I simply want to confirm my understanding of what occurred with the 2017 bill.
Sure.
My reading indicates that a home rule preemption was specifically proposed and was discussed.
Yes.
And that the General Assembly removed that
Yes, it did.
quite deliberately as part of the package.
As part of the negotiations,
And
yes.
part of the negotiation, and from that, I would infer that the General Assembly did not believe that the 2017 regulations were sufficiently comprehensive to warrant preempting home rule everywhere. And that might be a goal that you wish to achieve, and if the General Assembly were to, in the future, preempt home rule, well, that's that. But home rule was specifically removed as part of the negotiation, and therefore I conclude that the 2017 bill is not comprehensive and does not end the discussion. Therefore, it's entirely appropriate for us to consider whether we think that the state law is not sufficient.
I'll agree in part. We did propose preempting home rule. The reason it was removed is because there were other municipalities that had their own ordinances at the time that said, we'd like to keep ours in place. That was part of the negotiation. We said, all right, so let's have a minimum standard, and then we'll have these discussions. So yeah, you're correct in that part, but I disagree where they didn't say it wasn't comprehensive enough. I think it was more of others already currently had theirs in place, and they wanted to keep theirs in place. And then we'd have to have the discussion for anybody else who wanted to have that similar conversation, but they need to have the knowledge that the baseline had changed from what was in 2016 versus what was in 2017.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll answer any further questions if you have any. Thank you.
Any questions while Feeler is here? Mr. Commissioner Waldeck?
Thank you, Mayor. Like I said before, looking at the response from the federal government, I'm very disappointed they don't have enough inspectors, et cetera. But the actual question I have is, people, if they want a particular breed, they can go to reputable breeders. They get a lot of help along those lines. And then there's rescue dogs, and I'm wondering if there's just not enough dogs available out there for sale that, is a certain store going to run out of pets to sell, whether it's a rescue or whatever? Are they going to run out of dogs to sell, or why would they?
Well, you make an interesting point, to be honest. And so, two things there. You made a comment about how the USDA does not have enough inspectors. The USDA would disagree with you. And again, they're not proactive, but they do say that if people will call them, they will answer that directly. They actually believe that not only do they have enough, if they need more, they will get more. So all of their licensees are inspected, I believe, on an annual basis. USDA can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding. In terms of running out of dogs, that's a great question. I don't know if you will. There are certain breeders. My wife and I looked for a certain breed years ago, a bearded collie. No breeders were breeding them anymore because the demand was so low. So there's cycles. I don't know if you'll ever run out of dogs, but maybe there's a particular breed you can't find for a while because the demand isn't that high. But it really, I don't know if you'll ever run out of dogs. I know on the rescue and shelter side, in full disclosure, as you did before, I own 3 dogs. I own a dog from a hobby breeder, I own a dog from a shelter, and I own a dog from a pet store. They're all they've all been about the same in terms of health and temperament. So, like I said, I like having the choice of where to get a dog from. But I don't think you'll ever run out of dogs. I'm hearing that there are some rescues that even import dogs, whether from overseas. So if they're not here in Illinois, I know they're being sourced somewhere. But that's actually another thing that will be known greater within the coming year, because actually state law that was passed just this year will require rescues and shelters to report to the state where they get their animals from and when they sell them, who they're selling them to, so that there are greater statistics around those sourcing facts. So.
Commissioner Jose?
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. I apologize if this is in the materials. If it is, I missed it. You talked about disciplinary action that can be taken against, I believe, both breeders and pet stores under the 2017 law.
At least on pet stores, anybody licensed by the state has a penalty of fines for any violations of state law, and your license can be suspended or revoked.
How many times has that happened since the law was passed?
0.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. We know where to find you. Thank you. Appreciate you being here to add to the conversation. Good evening, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Tully and Village Commissioners. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
My name is Jonathan Burning. My family owns Happiness is Pets. I would like to take a moment to address a few of the items in the report that were given to the board. With Illinois Public Act 100-0322, it sets clear standards for where pet stores can obtain their puppies from. Pet stores can obtain puppies from USDA licensed breeders with no health-related violations of the Animal Welfare Act. The submitted report also cites information from the Humane Society of the United States, who clearly define a puppy mill as an operation that sells dogs for money and fail to breed them appropriately or provide adequate housing, shelter, staffing, nutrition, socialization, sanitation, exercise, and veterinary care. Therefore, a breeder that is in good standing with the USDA and has been found to have no violations for the above-mentioned criteria cannot, by their own definition, be defined as a puppy mill. The report also relies on a portion of the ASPCA's definition of a responsible breeder as someone that takes lifetime responsibility for the animals that are bred. This simply means that the breeder will allow the owner to relinquish ownership back to them in the event the owner no longer wants their dog. However, the ASPCA also includes 10 bullet points that outline proper health and welfare protocol for how breeders care for their own dogs. Our breeders meet each and every one of those criteria that qualifies as a responsible breeder. Simply stating that no responsible breeder sells to a pet store without any consideration as to how their dogs are cared for is terribly flawed logic. I have visited many breeders that do not sell to pet stores, and some are absolutely repulsive. At Happiness is Pets, we offer a 4-year health warranty for congenital defects for every puppy sold. We will even cover the cost of corrective surgery if necessary in some instances. I've yet to find a responsible breeder that doesn't sell to pet stores with a warranty of this scale. Please allow me to be very clear. Happiness is Pets does not purchase from puppy mills. I can prove it to you if you grant me the opportunity. Before you consider passing an ordinance that would prohibit the sale of breeder-sourced puppies, I ask you to accept my offer to visit some of the breeders and see for yourself. I'd be more than happy to take you. Prohibiting the sale of breeder-sourced puppies in Downers Grove pet stores will not cease the demand for pure and specialty-bred puppies, as not everyone desires a rescue dog. Rather, it will drive consumers to unregulated sources, leaving them with little to no recourse whatsoever in the event their new dog becomes ill. If your goal is to eradicate puppy mills, I can assure you this will not shut down one single puppy mill. You will greatly miss your mark, and the only thing you will accomplish will be to close a legitimate, multi-generation, family-owned small business that's been a good corporate citizen in Downers Grove for over 2 decades. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening and for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Any questions from the council? Not that you were asking for them, but as long as you're here. Thank you. Appreciate you sharing that. Thank you for being here tonight. Good evening. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Maya Damiano. I live at 21 West 341 Allstrand Road in Lombard, Illinois. I'm the campaign coordinator with the Companion Animal Protection Society. Thank you for considering a pet shop ordinance. Hopefully, you'll decide to ban the selling of puppies, kittens, and rabbits. We've been protesting Happiness is Pets for over 10 years. In 2012, we worked with the Clinton Law Firm and brought forth a class action lawsuit against all 5 of Burning stores. There was a distemper outbreak and many dogs died. After the outbreak, Burning changed breeders. He sought out the best way to sell puppies, use breeders that are under the radar. Happiness's Pets uses all breeders from Indiana and Amish country. Indiana requires no licensing or inspections. A lot of his breeders are unlicensed, which means no oversight at the facilities. We sent you evidence of what we could find on his breeders. Hopefully you can see the fraud that is going on. We have been receiving complaints at Happiness's Pets for years, and it's never going to stop until he stops selling sick and dying dogs. A month ago, we were contacted about a dog that was sold. The dog got sick and was taken to one of the vets they use. The consumer was told the dog was perfectly fine. A month later, the dog died at home. We are in the process of getting more information on what happened. We will continue to protest and spread the word to Adopt, Don't Shop. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? Good evening.
I took the short line.
Ms. Crawford, how are you? Happy New Year.
I'm very well. Happy New Year to you all. And I do, my name is Laura Crawford. I am representing Chamber 630, located at 2001 Butterfield Road in Downers Grove. And I do appreciate this topic being brought to council for discussion. For background purposes, I work for, on behalf of the 735 businesses of Chamber 630. The mission of the Chamber is to serve its members by providing and protecting the economic opportunities that make a successful enterprise. To be clear, Chamber 630 is a strong supporter of the free enterprise system and free market. With that said, Chamber 630 does not in any way support any abuse or neglect or harm of any animal, nor does it support puppy mills as defined on page 9 of the staff report. You are all aware that this council is limited to the jurisdiction of only, but the very great, Village of Downers Grove. And as we discuss puppy mills, only one business will be effective. The hundreds of suppliers of puppies in the state of Illinois and beyond will not be affected in any way by any action taken within these chambers. The likely ramification of actions taken within the chamber will only affect one business in Downers Grove, a family-owned business of 23 years. I challenge you today to think bigger and to be the town that you're known to be. You're innovative and you're impactful, and that is how you've always known to be, and I hope you move forward in that fashion. I've owned 11 dogs to date. I know I'll own more in the future. I currently have a rescue dog. So I think it's fair to call me a dog lover, dog person, whatever you want to call me. I truly believe that the way to gain the expected outcome the Humane Society of the United States and many others are seeking is to take a little time to examine, and not a year like Naperville, but a little time to examine a broader spectrum of resources that may truly accomplish your goal. For instance, in response to efforts by the Humane Society of the United States, the Ohio General Assembly approved legislation to significantly strengthen standards for the care of breeding dogs. Ohio was previously named one of the worst states in the nation for puppy mills. Ohio House Bill 506 includes a broad range of reforms consistent with those proposed in a ballot measure campaign by the Humane Society US and its coalition partners, Stop Puppy Mills Ohio, marking a major step forward to protect dogs and Ohio consumers. Ohio has gone from some of the nation's weakest provisions to protect dogs and puppy mills to having one of the nation's strongest anti-puppy mill laws. The bill includes many improvements. Some include, I'm just going to summarize a couple, ending stacking of cages, and some of this you think, oh my God, I can't even believe anyone does this. It bans wire flooring in enclosure that house breeding dogs, provides constant access to clean water and nutritious food at least 2 times a day. It increased the kennel sizes, requires vet exams on an annual basis at the very least, protection from extreme temperatures, and states that breeders can no longer house dogs in isolation. And I think the most impactful changes that they made in their legislation are that they place lifetime limits on the number of litters permitted per breeding mother, And it requires this is important, and it requires retailers selling puppies to acquire those animals from breeders who meet these standards regardless of what state the breeder is located in. This is the whole package. This is the solution, and it addresses the core problem that we've been talking about since October, or maybe earlier. Another provision protects dogs and consumers by changing the method by which retailers acquire dogs to sell. Consumers will be assured that stores are only selling dogs from breeders that meet these standards, including dogs sold from breeders located outside of Ohio. All of this information came from a press release written by Kristen Peek of the Humane Society, United States. Chamber 630 recommends that support of a duplicate bill in the state of Illinois be supported by the Village of Downers Grove and included as an option to address this issue. Additionally, Haley Zimmer, advisor for State and Stakeholder Relations of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, would be happy to speak with you on the effectiveness of this bill, as well as the credibility and the quantity of the USDA inspectors. As you contemplate your conclusion on this matter, I merely ask you to do what's really right for the animals, because I think that's the whole idea. I think you can truly and completely stop the inhumane treatment of animals throughout the entire state of Illinois through your support of a new bill in the state of Illinois. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your...
With me, I do have a copy of the Ohio bill, if you'd like it.
Please, if you can leave it with staff, we'll add it to our collection of materials. Thank you for your comments, Ms. Crawford. Appreciate you being here. Good to see you.
Nice to be here. Thanks.
Other questions or comments from members of the audience? Good evening, welcome.
Hey, good evening. Happy New Year, Mayor. Happy New Year, Council. Happy New Year, staff. Since our organization was named several times, I figured I should go next. I'm Mark Ayers. I'm the Illinois State Director for the Humane Society of the United States. Before I get into my remarks, just want to actually thank the staff for drafting the agenda packet. Tremendous job in putting this together. You really did your homework on putting this information in front of us today. I know it's lengthy and you did your homework quite well, so thank you for that. You know, some of the pet store owners and lobbyists tend to be negative, you know, when they're addressing this topic, and rightly so. They have a profit to be made in it. But I think this is a really exciting topic. This is very, very exciting for people like me, some of the folks sitting behind me. It's quite literally sweeping the nation, these humane ordinances are. I was in a town just northeast of here a few weeks ago, and at the time, you know, we were around 280 local ordinances throughout the United States. And now that I stand before you today, we're actually probably closer to 300 local ordinances just like that. The inclusion of Atlanta, Georgia, St. Paul, Minnesota, two huge cities just came on board with the humane ordinance. You know, and now there's entire states coming on board with this stuff. It was in the packet. California is the first state in the nation to have this. Maryland just followed suit. They're state number 2. Pennsylvania, it already passed one chamber out there. It didn't pass the other chamber because we ran out of time to pass it. So Pennsylvania might literally be the 3rd state to pass a humane law there. New Jersey could be 4th. A handful of states on the East Coast could be 5th, 6th, and 7th. Illinois, I hope we're on the top 10, and that's my goal, is to get this passed statewide. But that can be helped by folks like you in Downers Grove passing a humane ordinance at the local level. In Illinois, we have a number of these already. I think Brian stated a few of them. Chicago, Cook County, Warrensville, Waukegan, Crest Hill. I'm in, and other folks behind me are advocating in about a half dozen local communities in Illinois as we speak. I'm not going to name them today because the lobbyists behind me would probably like to oppose some of them if they knew where we were putting those humane ordinances in at. But we're like 6 or 7 or 8, cities and towns and villages where we're putting a humane ordinance in. And I'm very confident that we'll pass all of those by the spring. So I would love to see Downers Grove come on board with a humane ordinance. The HSUS would absolutely support option 3A. I do want to just say one little caveat with that. In your packet, if you look at option 3A, that said there's 3 bullet points. And that second bullet point, I would just encourage to just do away with that. Do not include that, only because I think that's going to be a very high administrative burden for the village to actually enforce. I think that would be tough for anyone, even a major city, to enforce. So I would take that off. In fact, I think we've sent some language, I believe, to the village that does just that. It's basically a PetSmart, Petco model. So a store can open up their space for an adoption event, and it's very successful because of that. I would also add that we would support, option 2, but I think option 2, that takes a while. Everything that happens down in Springfield, it can take a while. And so I'm hopeful that with Brian and DuPage County, we can get something done county-wide here, but who knows what could happen with the lobbyists on the other side. It can take a while. So I would love to see 2280 or some version thereof pass, but I think Downers Grove can make an example here and come on board with the humane ordinance on your own. So with that, I think I'll just yield back the remainder of my time, and unless there's any questions from the village staff or council.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here. Any questions from the council? Commissioner Burnett.
I got a question. Thanks for coming. This is, we need all this kind of input to really be weighing these things accurately. You referred to this report that we've got and a couple of the options in there. In particular, so am I understanding correctly that the Humane Society, at least of Illinois, the Humane Society of the United States, goal and intent is to prohibit any retail sales of dogs, cats, or rabbits?
The retail sale, correct.
Retail sales
Correct.
of dog, cats, rabbits. So help me understand the definition of retail sale. If we
So-
look at, let me frame this up a little bit. And
Yeah.
what I'm trying to do is weigh some of the choices that we've been proposed to consider. So as it relates to our 3B, there's some AKC, ASPCA definitions of responsible.
Yeah.
As it relates to breeders. And so help me put the connection between retail, the term retail as used by the Humane Society, and the ASCPA definition of responsible
Yeah,
breeder, and how those go to market.
So the retail sale, again, so the Happiness is Pets, the Poundland, the major folks are selling puppies in their pet stores. That's the retail sale. There are a lot of stores that operate on the opposite model, PetSmart being one of them, Petco being one of them. There's even a local chain in Naperville called Dog Patch that operates on the same model. Dog Patch was actually selling, commercially bred puppies for a number of years. But through the work of Carrie Myers and the Puppy Mill Project, they converted their store to a humane model. So I think that...
So is Dog Patch no longer retail in your mind?
The rescue animals are adopted there, rescue and shelter pets.
So the Humane Society's definition of retail is non-rescue?
Yes, yes,
I mean,
yes.
I'm just trying
Yeah,
to...
and there's also, and I think the problem is, no responsible breeder is going to sell to a pet store. I think that's what it boils down to. There are certain things that can happen when a consumer wants to buy a puppy. When they go to the pet store, if you got the checkbook, the puppy is yours. However, if you buy in person, directly, face-to-face to a responsible breeder, a number of things can happen that need to happen. First off, you can meet the breeder yourself. The breeder can meet you. You can tour the facility. You can meet all the dogs. More importantly, you can meet the mother dog. The mother dog is oftentimes the most abused animal that you never get to see. You can inspect the conditions. All of that can happen face-to-face at these operations that you do in person. None of this stuff can happen when you go to a pet store. You have to take them at their word that they came from humane places, but we don't know. And it goes back to the earlier point with USDA. With the state law that was mentioned earlier, we were neutral on that final product because it cannot be enforced. And so when the lobbyists say that, we're going to give you these inspection reports, how do we verify that they're accurate, that they're recent? I could have brought with me a paper that we get from USDA. It's completely redacted. The paper is black. You cannot link the breeder to the findings with the USDA. You can't link them up at all. It is completely unenforceable. A week after the USDA removed the records from their website, they put forward that legislation. And I think that speaks to its intent.
I want to follow up about the business model. I have a copy of what I believe is the most current, it may not be the most current, Humane Society Model Ordinance, and it talks about an adoption model, that there is no retail sale, that a pet store can facilitate an adoption. So the store doesn't sell the pet to the customer. The store is an intermediary that then allows the person wishing a dog to make a relationship with the adoption agency. Is that?
That's absolutely correct.
So that therefore, to go to Commissioner Barnett's point, a store simply cannot sell a dog or a cat or a rabbit at retail under any circumstances. They can facilitate an adoption, but they cannot take a check for that animal. They can't take a check for the animal. They can get the Humane Society and the person in the family that wants the dog, they can help facilitate that contact. That's my understanding of, reading the draft ordinance, and that's the model I prefer, quite frankly, that we don't worry about the sourcing of the animal because there's no retail sales. A pet store can facilitate an adoption, that's a great thing, but there's no retail sales, period. And I understand that so therefore, it's not that they can sell rescue dogs, they can't sell rescue dogs, they can't sell any dogs. They can facilitate adoption. Is that,
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, they have nothing to do with that. The rescue will come in, they do the paperwork, they set up the adoptions, they talk to the adoptees, the parents that want to adopt a pet, and they handle it. Now, but while you're there, of course you're going to shop for supplies, dog food, the bedding, the toys, things like that. But the rescues handle all aspects of what you just mentioned. That's correct.
So that's the definition of retail sale. Just a little bit, what's your organization's position on what I might term occasional sales, sales that don't qualify as retail sales? I have a dog and there's 8 puppies and my nephew wants to buy one for $50.
Fantastic. Go right ahead. As long as they're, if you can meet the buyer, the people can meet you, inspect the conditions, meet the mom, that's fantastic. But this has nothing to do with that. This is the retail sale of animals sold in pet stores, so.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, appreciate you being here. And one thing I also want to appreciate is, in addition to all the materials that was provided to us, and we've got this thing called the internet that we can all go out and find stuff. And one of the things I appreciated was a document put out by the Humane Society of the United States called A Guide to Using Local Ordinances to Combat Puppy Mills. And as I read the document, which was very interesting because it's an advocacy guide basically to how to get this done. If you want to really get to the core of the issue, go right to the guide on how to do it. And I think that the objective here is unanimously shared. That's, I don't hear any dispute from anybody in the room about that. It's how do you get there? And one thing I appreciate is the guide, among other things, talks about, there may be enforcement and other issues that you have to address and adjust a little bit from model ordinances or sort of a template based upon a organization or whatnot. And page 4 of the guide recognizes that, and I actually appreciate that because it's not our way or the highway. It's here's the objective, and we understand that in order to achieve that objective, we may have to compromise if needed with respect to enforcement issues or other things. So I just wanted to note that. I appreciate that as something that the Humane Society of the United States is recognizing that to achieve the greater good, you may have to make some adjustments all along the way. And to that point, one of the things we do try to do here in Downers Grove is to do it the Downers Grove way. on a number of different issues, and that is, first and foremost, with the input and consent of the community. So that's something we always try to do. There may be other towns that do it certain ways, but we always look at those as guide, but we do try to achieve the result that's best for our community, because after all, that is what's most important. So anyway, that was just more of a comment, not a question, but I appreciate you very much being here at our meeting. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? I was stalling, just trying to make sure you had enough time to finish.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Kimberly Backman, 1321 67th Street in Downers Grove. I'm an animal law and advocacy attorney. I'm also a volunteer with the Humane Society working in the 6th Congressional District. So lots of good speakers here today. Thank you for the opportunity for myself also to be present. One of the most important topics that I'm hearing is on USDA inspections. And Mayor Tully is correct that we all have the internet. So for anyone thinking that a USDA oversight is sufficient to protect these female animals, I encourage each and every one of you to get on your laptop, get on your cell phone, and look that up. There was a prior speaker who was offering invitations to travel to USDA facilities. I have been to them. They are horrific. I have been to facilities that passed with no demerits, no fines, no any markings whatsoever, and those conditions are deplorable. So for anyone who's ever owned not only a dog but any pet, if you think of your personal animal from when you were a child, or maybe now you're a parent and you have one for your children, think of that animal in a small confined space with wire bars that the feet go through, not even a solid surface, perhaps feces piled up, no ability to go for a walk. For anyone out there who's ever taken a dog for a walk, these females don't get to walk. They don't get veterinary care oftentimes. I've been to FDA, the process by which they go and investigate them. I've gone and seen them firsthand, and I encourage all of you to do so. It is estimated that the number of female dogs that we're talking about at USDA facilities is 126,000, actually more than 126,000. Puppies sold annually who originated from these puppy mills. And so by puppy mills, we're not talking about the female who accidentally got pregnant and we're selling that to our cousin or our mom. We're talking about these conditions where females are kept in deplorable conditions. The estimated number of puppies sold is 2.3 million. That's a lot of puppies. And I agree with a prior speaker that maybe by passing this ordinance in Downers Grove doesn't shut down that puppy mill, but maybe it's a stepping stone. Maybe 2 towns over they hear what we did in Downers Grove, and maybe 30 communities after that, and maybe at the state level after that. And then we can close down puppy mills. That's what makes the difference. I agree with Mayor Tully that it's an easy concept. The execution is what's difficult, but in Downers Grove, I know that all of you can get that done. As a final point, I would add that while there's 2.3 million puppies being sold from puppy mills, the number of estimated dogs and cats euthanized by shelters is 3 million. So just think about that for a second. We have 126,000 female dogs who don't get to go for a walk and don't get to play with a toy and don't have a blanket to sleep in at night, and at the same time, we're euthanizing 3 million other pets. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Terrific. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your comments with us. Good evening. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Dr. Barb Hannock. I'm the veterinarian administrator for DuPage County. Sorry. And to address a few things, as far as Commissioner Waldock had mentioned, as far as if there's a litter of puppies from an unwanted pregnancy, that's what we're there for at the shelter. We would be more than happy to take that litter of puppies. And the beautiful thing about bringing them to us is that when they get adopted, they're going to be vaccinated, dewormed, microchipped, and spay-neutered. So they're not going to contribute to the problem of overpopulation, and we won't have to talk about all these increased numbers of euthanasias due to homeless pets that don't have responsible homes. So, and also to address the option 3B, where it talks about breeders meeting certain standards, that as far as administrative costs, time, I don't even see how it could possibly be done. But I would be happy to talk to you about that, so if ever you want to call me at the county, we can discuss that. But as far as having an investigative body that can regulate as far as, the standards, I have great difficulty seeing how it could be done. Because even as the USDA, as Mark and the attorney that just mentioned, the standards are minimum that they set from the Animal Welfare Act. And we described it last time, and she described it also as far as feces and stacked cages and extreme weather temperatures, and 6 inches is the minimum around the animal that they could live in for their entire life, never hitting the ground except for maybe to breed. So it's not a model that we want to support. As far as up until about 2 years ago, I was the medical director for PAW Chicago, and we would get some of these dogs at the HSUS and the ASPCA when they go in and do a seizure of these facilities, and sometimes they pull out maybe 100 animals or something like that, and we were able to accept, I think, maybe about a dozen of them, and these were females that were had mammary glands like hanging to the ground because they've been nursed on for so many times. They had heart murmurs. Their mouth was rotten as far as full of teeth. The remaining teeth that they did have were really in poor shape. And the saddest thing wasn't even so much the physical shape that they came in, was just their lack of spirit, if I was to say. They were kind of a shell of a dog, as far as they almost were a different species as far as not responding to human interaction and to care, as far as to human interaction and just enjoying people and just basically living in fear sometimes of humans and what we would think would be a normal interaction between a pet owner and a pet. So, over at the county, we accepted to talk a little bit about rabbits, because I know we focus a lot on dogs, but to speak on rabbits a little bit, we just received, in 2018, we accept animals that people don't want, and we received just about 400 rabbits. And rabbits, unfortunately, are incredibly labor-intensive as far as they have to stay with us longer, because as a species, they are not as strong. So as far as post-operative leave, because we don't adopt them out where they can still breed. They're spay-neutered, and you want to make sure they're healthy. Sometimes people just dump them in the forest preserve, and then they bring them, and then people find them and bring them to us, and they're severely matted and et cetera. So we have to get them healthy and spay-neuter them, and then unlike if they're adopted out through, or if they're bought through a pet store, then unfortunately sometimes the owners don't even know if they're male or female sometimes by the time they bring them to us. So sometimes they're breeding and inbreeding and having more, and they're put together, and as you know, rabbits will reproduce quite prolifically. So as far as rabbits, it is a major concern for us as far as the amount of ones that we have available and that are relinquished to us. As far as, I really want to, applaud you guys as far as for considering option 3A. I really think it's the most responsible and humane option. And not only responsible as far as for humane approach to animals, but also just protecting consumers and also protecting employees. I'll mention that just about a year ago, there was an outbreak of Campylobacter, was touched on a little bit last time in October at our meeting here, and that there was 113 human cases of people that received an infection, and this is a multi-drug resistant infection in humans from puppies that were purchased through pet stores. And actually, out of those 113 patients, 25 of them were pet store employees. And that's because these puppies, as they're being transported, are treated like livestock, and a lot of times they're given antibiotics indiscriminately, as far as just in mass, not that they necessarily need it. So unfortunately, when you do that, you select for very resistant bacteria that when the human now gets it, because it's a zoonotic disease, where humans get this from a puppy, it's very hard for the MD to treat, because there's not drugs that are available that will treat it. It's resistant. So unfortunately, in pet store conditions where it might be unsanitary and crowded and these animals are stressed, and they go through this transport system like livestock, they're going to be more prone. And in DuPage County, our health department, DuPage County Health Department confirmed that there was 2 cases of these multi-drug resistant Campylobacter infections in DuPage County. So that was from the pet store. So that is a huge concern. So this is not only a humane animal topic that we're talking about here, it's also looking at protecting consumers as far as from disease and also the employees. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your experiences with us. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? Good evening, welcome.
Good evening, Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
I appreciate you having this on your agenda once again. Everyone did such a great job of speaking. I debated coming up, but of course I had to. My name is Peggy Grandal. I live at 1103 Rye Hill in Joliet. I have a dog rescue. My personal dog came from a reputable, responsible breeder. He's going to be 14 years old. This breeder's been by my side his entire life. Kept in touch, was always a source for me of help and encouragement. But what I came here tonight to talk about was something else, but I wanted to say, as a rescue person, this is the worst time of year, the next month or so. This is when we start seeing the dogs coming in because of the puppies that were given at Christmas, the impulse puppies. The older dogs coming into shelters that are being relinquished because of the Christmas puppy. Can't blame the pet store for the decisions a family is making, but they make it very easy for people to buy these dogs impulsively without thinking. But I came here to talk to you about something personal. You've got a lot of data. I hear you have a lot of reading, and you've been given a lot, but this is just something personal for me, and why it's important to me. First, there was a dog named Frosty. She was my Alaskan Malamute, bought at Puppy Palace years ago. 4 months old, she was discounted because she was getting too old and too big. One of her nails was deformed, and they told us that's why she couldn't be a show dog, and that's why her Missouri breeder sent her to them. She had severe health issues throughout her short life, and we lost her to Wobbler syndrome. Then there was Harry. After losing Frosty, we went to Archer Puppies and found a sweet border collie. He was a very quiet puppy. He was much too quiet. Monday, at his first vet visit, we found out he had just about every intestinal parasite possible and was severely debilitated. I called the store, and I was told to return him. They'd make good on their warranty with a replacement. It was like a TV or a vacuum that didn't work. They don't understand that we love these animals, and your warranties and your price, it's not helping. We love them. You can give us all the warranties in the world, but we have to suffer with a sick puppy. My vet pulled Harry through. We had him for 11 years, complete with a vast assortment of health issues, and we lost him at 11, which was much too young for a border collie. And not long thereafter, I went to the now-closed Joliet Petland. There was a border collie pup there. They told me he was just what I needed to heal my broken heart, and I was in tears. They put him in my arms, and I noticed something was very wrong with his back leg. I was told he had been sleeping on it, but that sounded wrong, and I went outside and I called my vet. I had just moved to Joliet. I learned that he had considerable experience with dogs coming from pet stores and explained to me where the dogs come from and what the situation likely had been with the puppy being on wire floors probably his entire young life. He told me to run out the door and never look back. They preyed upon my grief to make a sale, and I have never, ever forgotten that little puppy with the bad paw. I wonder what happened to him. I wanted you to know about Frosty, Harry, and the border collie I left behind, because you see, I was one of those people that simply didn't know any better. There's countless people out there like me. The pet industry hasn't changed. They just learned how to market themselves better with financing, leasing, complicated warranties, and even more. Even to go so far as to suggest that a customer is adopting a puppy, which couldn't be further from the truth. And they fight hard. They've learned how to get in front of elected officials like yourself to sell it, and they pay a lot of money to their lobbyists to close the deal. They've been going state to state, trying to convince lawmakers to pass bills that would strip local governments of the right to regulate pet stores and also to preempt any laws already in the books. And I don't understand where they get that right. But I also come here to talk to you about another dog. His name is Stevie. He came from Happiness's Pets, from an Amish breeder. He was sold and then returned because he was deaf. He was also critically ill with pneumonia. He came into rescue. We didn't know if he was going to make it. He could barely breathe. And today, his challenges continue. He's what's known as a double merle, a genetic disaster due to merle-to-merle breeding, which no responsible breeder would ever consider. Puppies like Stevie are simply links in the supply chain, an 8-week-old deaf puppy sold to an unsuspecting consumer. But it doesn't have to be this way. There's endless puppies and dogs available in shelters and rescues, including purebreds. There's reputable, responsible breeders that will ensure the best match for a family, and those breeders, as we all have heard, never supply puppies to pet stores or brokers. These breeders are concerned about the welfare of the animals, not their profitability, nor do they breed specialty or designer breeds, which is nothing more than mixed breeds. It's marketing. Retail bans need to be passed to protect consumers who end up the unknowing victims. I'm asking you this, each one of you, please go big. Restrict the sale of dogs, cats, and rabbits here in Downers Grove. I mentioned earlier about the industry attempt to take away the ability to legislate for your community. And Mr. Fiedler talked about this. In Illinois, the statewide Safe Pets Act, sponsored by the pet industry in 2017, included preemption as the key component. And there was a hard-fought fight to get that removed so that you could exercise your home rule authority. I ask you to do what close to 300 cities and 2 states have done, with more on the way. You'll do this and continue to be leaders in animal welfare for DuPage County. And the world is messed up right now. I think it's time for us to grab back our humanity and create a more compassionate world for our children and grandchildren. And I thank you for your time and efforts in this. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? All right, well, thank you very much to everyone who spoke. We appreciate you coming down and sharing your experiences and input and information with us from a variety of different perspectives. I'll come back to the Village Council, see if there are any other questions or comments at this time. Again, we don't have an ordinance in front of us. We're not taking any action tonight, but appreciate all the information. We do have some more to noodle on, as I've heard at least 1 or 2 of my colleagues reflect. Commissioner Waldeck, looks like you had your hand up.
Thank you. I will change my preference to the 3A, and you convinced me. Nobody commented on 3C, which was the warranty, and I don't want to leave it to a point where nobody comments on it, but I don't think the village can get into the warranty type situation. You know, I don't know how long warranties would last, whether it's a year or 2, and it's just something that's, I think, is undoable by the village. I would like a comment from my colleagues about if there are any administrative costs. My suggestion for helping to defray those costs, I would like some feedback on that. Nobody commented on that at all. So I'd appreciate that. And for my final comment, this isn't a sales pitch. It's for the dogs, but if anybody's interested in some Siberian Husky pups, about 6 weeks old, send an email. I had time to spend with 6 of them, and you want to take all of them home. They just run around, they're having a great time, they're healthy, and it's just a laugh a minute, and then you look out the window and you see the mother and the father out there, and you see how big they get, and you go, no, this isn't going to happen. So if anybody's interested, just send an email. Thanks.
Sure, thanks. I will respect your request, Commissioner, and give you my thoughts, at least initially, on the proposal to defray administrative costs. And I'll start with, I really want to better understand what the administrative burdens actually are, and I don't think at this point in time we've really dug into that, so I would want to understand that first to see what they really consist of, to what extent, what scope, if there are other ways of addressing them rather than finding a revenue source to defray them. I'm very reluctant. In fact, I'll go so far as to say right now I would not want to impose what basically amounts to a new tax in order to generate revenue to defray those costs, certainly not without better understanding the administrative burdens and if there are other alternatives to the extent that such burdens actually exist. somehow minimizing them so that there was no need to identify a new revenue source or otherwise address them. But that's, as I sit here, having thought about it for all of an hour. I don't know if anyone else wants to weigh in on it.
I agree. I think while I appreciate the suggestion of how to pay for it, I think we need to figure out how much we're talking about before we go to the lengths of instituting a fee or a tax or anything like that. So as soon as we know what kind of a handle we've got on costs, then we'll know better what we need to do.
If anybody else wants to weigh in, Commissioner White?
But to sort of return to what my original points are, I remain committed to recommending that we proceed with option 3A. I think the most recent U.S. Humane Society True Draft Ordinance, model ordinance, gives us a pretty comprehensive start. I don't want us reinventing the wheel. I think it's a pretty good ordinance. I very much like what they have in their current version of Section 2, which simply bans the retail sale of these types of animals, period, and the ability to facilitate an adoption connection with an established, reputable adopting agency is something that can be done in the PETS model. And I want to add as a final comment that it hadn't occurred to me until this evening, until the last speaker spoke, that there is public interest in discouraging unprepared families from making impulse purchases. That it is in the public interest that the purchase of a dog or a cat or a rabbit is taken very seriously by the family choosing to do so. And that in itself is a public policy goal, I think, that this ordinance can promote. So let's go forward with 3A, it's my opinion.
Be careful, next you'll have us banning fast food restaurants in town, too.
Okay, well, maybe oversized drinks.
That's all right, we can defray the cost of the soda tax.
Plastic bags, straws, all there's lots of it.
Right. You're making my point, thank you. Anybody else want to weigh in? Commissioner Barnett?
I don't know if you're looking, if you're tallying over there or what you're doing, but I'd like to understand, I think to Mayor's point and to Marge's as well, I'd like to understand what you guys think those costs actually are, what they look like, what they mean in terms of, what would that be? Is it, hire 15 people, or, is it just some sort of a further development of what that means, instead of just the table with high costs listed? It would be helpful to me.
We will prepare, based on the direction and feedback we're getting tonight, we will prepare a draft ordinance for your consideration and an explanation of the administrative costs and procedures that would go along with it.
Okay, well, I think you picked up on the same thing I did. There's certainly a multiplicity of directions.
And that ends our first reading tonight.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate the conversation here at the dais, and also all who came down and contributed to the conversation. We appreciate it both tonight and in the past. Again, we're not making any, we don't have an ordinance in front of us. I can anticipate the next question. When would we have an ordinance in front of us? And I'm pretty sure that since we only have one more meeting this month, and we have some other scheduling issues, it might be a bit.
Probably mid-February or so, I think. I don't think we're going to turn this around in a couple days for next week, so mid-February.
Well, yeah, I don't think that. I never expected that to happen. That wouldn't happen in the ordinary course. We don't have a third meeting. We don't have a meeting on the 22nd, so it would be in the February. Then we have some other scheduling issues that we have to address. So that sounds about as reasonable as could be, and that allows for more reading to be done and some more information to be provided. But in the meantime, it won't hold up preparation of something consistent with what we've heard from everyone up here.
Sounds like the schedule, mid-February.
Time for Valentine's Day? No. All right, very good. Well, thank you. That brings us to, as was mentioned, the end of the first reading and on to item 8, which is the mayor's report. And I do have some things to report out tonight. As the council knows, and folks who watch council meetings closely, for nearly the last 8 years, I have served as the District 3 municipal representative to the DuPage County Stormwater Management Committee on behalf of all the communities within District 3, not just Downers Grove. Today was my last meeting in that role. My term ended on December 31st. However, I was told that you serve until replaced. So I went to today's meeting. There is a replacement. While I appreciate my colleagues who volunteered to serve in that position, ultimately, Westmont trustee Steve Nero was chosen as the District 3 representative. I think Steve will serve us well. He will most likely be formally approved and in attendance at the first meeting in February. And I will make sure that there's a good informational transition with Steve in terms of the role and his responsibilities, not just to his home community, but also to the other communities in District 3, which is part of the job. But three things out of today's meeting, so I was very glad I went, that I want to share with the council and the community as I've done in the past. And first and foremost is, I know that there are folks out there who have been tracking the seemingly unending process of the countywide floodplain mapping process. And I do have an update. The Stormwater Management Committee and county staff reported that they remain on track to have the letters of final determination issued by FEMA on February 1st of 2019. And I will provide this memo that can be shared with anyone who's interested. It's a short memo. But the long and short of it is, given that statement I just made, it is anticipated that the new floodplain maps, official floodplain maps, will be effective as of August 1st of 2019. There are some issues that county staff is still looking at with respect to items that were raised with the preliminary floodplain maps, and there are some study areas that are going on, including a portion of St. Joseph's Creek. So I will provide the memo to staff and can share that with the rest of the council, as well as anyone in the community who's interested. I think I also put it out there on social media, because I know some folks are interested in when the maps will be final, and that's the latest update. They should be effective as of August 1st of this year. Number two, there's another document that I want to share with both the council and staff, so I took great pains not to write on it. You may recall that the county a few years ago did what Village of Downers Grove had done much earlier, which is basically a assessment of all our stormwater needs, and then prioritize them, and then determine how we would pay for what we had decided was of high priority. The county did that later on a much broader basis involving a lot of different stakeholders, a lot of different communities, not-for-profit organizations, et cetera, and basically came up with a list of services that would cover things such as watershed management, water quality, regulatory services, floodplain mapping, and operations and maintenance of existing stormwater facilities. And came up with different levels in each category, either level 1, level 2, or level 3, in terms of, if you will, you can think of it as Goldilocks and the Three Bears. It was too cold, too hot, and then just right. The Stormwater Management Committee, after a great deal of discussion about a year or so ago, adopted for most of the categories I just mentioned, level 2 of service, with the exception of water quality, where the highest level was selected. And then dollar amounts were ascribed to each in terms of the budget, or actually the service level was commensurate with a dollar amount. That was why you had small, medium, and large, if you will. And at today's committee meeting, staff reported out on their progress to date, understanding that this is something that has been in the works for about a year and a half now, and is going to continue over several more years at least. Staff was quick to note that a lot of these items have been accomplished, notwithstanding the fact that they've been given no additional money, if any money, from the county board, but they found ways to do it. So I just wanted to share this with our staff, because I think it's important to see where the county's at on these issues, but also I think the council and future councils will be interested in knowing this, and then we count on Trustee Nero to keep us apprised in the future. And just because I grab information when I can, all the new county stormwater committee staff were introduced as of the start of the year, so there's a brand new org chart. So I'm sure that will be on someone's wall in an office, or not. So this is all this information stuff that I won't take the time to describe, but I thought it might be useful, so I brought it back, and if it can be PDF'd and shared, that would be great. And that ends my report. That brings us to item 9, the manager's report. Mr. Fuelman, back to you.
No report tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, and now for the weather, item 10, the attorney's report. Ms. Petrarca, Happy New Year, how are you?
Great, Happy New Year, Mayor. Only one item to report tonight, and that is an ordinance annexing 5614 Katrine Avenue to the Village of Downers Grove. That is all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item 11, which is reserved for council member reports. This is an opportunity for members of the Village Council to share with those in the audience and those watching at home either items of interest and other goings-on in the community of Downers Grove, or to report out as their liaisons to other boards or organizations, much like I just did with respect to the DuPage County Stormwater Management Committee. So I will start tonight to my far left with Commissioner Barnett. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. I have no report.
Thank you. Commissioner Earl.
No report, Mayor.
Very good. Commissioner Jose.
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Waldeck.
No report, Mayor.
Commissioner Wallace.
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, pressure is on, Commissioner White.
I have a motion to adjourn.
I'll take that as a no report and a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? All right, I hear a second. Motion to adjourn, a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you.